Hey everybody, we're back for another amazing episode, and here is a person that I've been wanting to talk to for a while now. His name is Nadim, and he is the co-founder and the chief operating officer at NuAge, and he is a great success story in the no-code space. He brought the company from, I think it was just a couple $100,000 to $5 million, fully leveraging no-code tools. So we'll talk a bit about that. We'll talk about entrepreneurship in general, and also your role as a chief operating officer. I think not a lot of people understand what that means. Nadim, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit, like, first of all, what is NuAge?
So NuAge is a short-term rental operator. We have lofts and sort of like upscale apartments that we rent to tourists, vacationers, focusing primarily on families, group travel, and so on. So yeah, really focusing on providing people with an experience when they come visit a new city.
So it's similar to Airbnb then, but maybe
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think we sort of operate in a really interesting space between Airbnb and a hotel, where we're sort of giving people a bit more of a standardized, they know what they're going to get when they come stay with us, while also having that level of leaving some room for exploration, being immersed in a city, and then also just space. Like I think something hotels really don't do a good job of giving people space to live in. And I think that's something we really look for, like high square footage locations where people can actually just like interact with the space, interact with each other, and have like memories that last when they go back home.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think that's the smart thing to do when you have these larger markets that are taking like the large portion of the market share, like Airbnb, is to be like, okay, where are the niches, right? There are people who want higher service, who want higher commodity. The people renting out their luxury lofts might not want to just rent them out on Airbnb. You know, there's been a lot of horror stories around that as well. So why don't you bring us through the story of you sort of joining the company, and then at a very early stage, then learning how to become a no-code badass wizard, and then and taking over the world.
Sure. Yeah. So I joined. It was a weird way. I was sort of coming out of my own project that I was working on at the time. I was sort of in this like limbo space in my life. Wasn't sure if I was going to stick around in Montreal or leave. And I have a friend who was advising the startup, NuAge, and he kind of connected me with Ali, the CEO. And we started talking about NuAge. I really liked the business proposition. I thought that there was a really interesting space that they were moving into. This was back in 2016, was maybe 2018. I don't even know my years anymore. So we started chatting, and basically I decided to join. And I think right away, my like first thing, it was sort of like my first job, like my first actual like working for someone else. And that was an interesting experience. And I don't know, right away when I joined, I was like, all right, what are my personality is sort of like, I always look for the problems. I'm sort of have a pessimistic outlook on things. So I'm just like, all right. Yeah, exactly. Like what's broken, what doesn't make sense. I don't know, I just sort of observed a while, and I saw sort of how they were doing customer service, how they were managing the reservations, and like how dependent they were on Airbnb to like do everything that they need to do to sort of like carry out the operations of the business. And I was like, that sucks. That's broken. That doesn't make sense. I was just like, I was probably a nightmare for them for my first like month. I was just like, you're doing that the wrong way. That's stupid. And then I was, just like I had a bit of experience with Airtable from my previous project, which was an art gallery. We used Airtable to sort of manage the database. And I was like, there has to be a way to like get us off Airbnb, get us into like a place where we have our own system that is a bit more like malleable, a bit more customizable, something that works exactly for us. And so I was like, all right, Airbnb. All right, now so I started like just working on Airbnb a bit. On Airtable a bit, and then I was like, all right, like I need to supercharge this some way. I need to like be able to connect this to something else so that I can actually, like start to build out a system. And that's when I found Zapier, started using that, and then that just opened a lot of doors. It really just like unlocked the world to me, I think, at that point. So yeah, and then I just started like full on, was 100% focused on building this like reservation management system for us. And yeah, and that's how I started.
That's great because you went straight to the heart of it. Like if you talk about North Star metrics, like for a company like Airbnb or like Nuage, it's really nights booked, right? And so
Right.
going into the booking system and optimizing that was probably the place where you saw you could have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time.
For sure.
So basically, just for those listening, essentially, Airtable is a database, and Zapier is something that allows you to connect that database to other things like your front end experience. And so, basically you were able to leverage that. So what was the big sort of first sort of growth breakthrough in terms of like building? What was the first thing that sort of you saw had a big influence on the growth of the business?
So I think like one thing Airbnb still to this day doesn't do that well is give professional hosts like us like data, like information about how our business is performing. We had like no idea. And every time we would download one of their they would just send a monthly report, which was honestly, I should send it to you. It's pretty hilarious how just like it doesn't tell you anything. And it just didn't do anything for us. We just had no understanding of what are the drivers of our business? Like, how do we optimize our sales channel? Like, how do we get more bookings on Airbnb, which was our only channel at the time? So I essentially like reverse engineered the emails that they send when you get a confirmed booking, they'll send an email out. And then I would just pull that email and then take all the information from that email, put it into Airtable. And then from there, I now had access to much more information. I had access to the number of nights that we were getting booked, where the person was booking from, the nightly rates, with the dates that they had booked, when they had booked. So I was able to just like collect all of that. And then, be able to just like look at it and use that information once we had enough of it to actually like understand, all right, like we're getting a lot of traffic specifically from France versus from Germany. Like if we were to ever use that information for a marketing purpose, we would have something there. We understood much more about our occupancy and how our booking lead times were influenced by specifically when we applied discounts. Like if we applied discounts on Mondays, we tended to do a much better job that weekend than if we did it on Wednesdays. So stuff like that really like just we didn't have access to that before I was able to sort of pull that email and then sort of like parse that email into all the important bits of information. So I think that was the major breakthrough, was realizing that they send us all the information in the email, even though they might not have it on the platform, they send it in the email. So if I'm able to pull that out of the email that we get, then we can really
track it over time, all those different,
exactly,
even just basic metrics. That's really cool.
Yeah, we pretty much, I think up to now, we probably have something like 20,000 data points, which is quite a bit, considering if this didn't exist, we wouldn't have known like any of that. So yeah.
Interesting. So you just took those data points, and then eventually, I'm guessing that had such a big influence on the way that you made decisions and adapted your strategy to market and all that, that really triggered the growth. So
for sure.
Did you eventually convert that into a full sort of your own stats as well? Like, did you create your own analytics platform as well?
So it's a bit rudimentary at the moment. There's some tools that I'm looking at right now that I need to like spend a bit more time on. Pretty much everything gets exported out to Google Sheets. I just had the most familiarity with Google Sheets, so it was just natural for me to just go for something I knew from the beginning, especially because I was like learning so much. I was like, all right, I need to segment my learning and focus on a couple softwares at a time. So everything went to Google Sheets, and then from there it's just like it takes me like 5 minutes to load up my Google Sheet just because of how many just like columns of information that we have. I probably have too much. I was just like I went a bit too crazy with it, but yeah, we honestly have so much information now. It's just the combinations of like information and what we were able to pull, being able to segment the apartments, being able to segment the people who are coming, and then you have like just like these massive matrices of just information. And I'm someone who's like collect information and store it there, even though I might not be never looking at that specific piece of information. It's still there. It's still getting updated by itself automatically. And who knows, maybe one day I'll need it and I'll have it there. So there's just like tons of information.
So are you now, every time you receive an email from Airbnb, are you still gathering the data from the?
Yeah, we still use it to this day. Like every single booking that comes in, it's actually it's not just for the data, but also our like on the ground team uses like Trello to manage the reservations. So essentially what happens is every time a reservation comes in, it gets pushed into Airtable, and then Airtable will send specific pieces of information to different places. One of those is Google Sheets, where that's sort of like for me to look at the data and to track occupancy and stuff like that. And then another destination is Trello, which is normally a project management software, but we sort of like used it for our own purposes. So it creates a card for each reservation and then goes through a series of lists to sort of track that customer journey. So from when they book till when they check out, it just like moves through, and that lets our team manage each reservation on the go, fully like automated, and leave notes for each other if something happened, or leave some labels to identify like where they are within that process of staying with us.
So Airtable is kind of the central piece, and then you're pumping out information from there, presumably through Zapier and some direct integrations. And then what are the other areas of the business that you think sort of having learned some of these no-code tools has affected the most? Is it in sales and marketing? Is it in like what other areas of the business has this influenced?
I think honestly, it's maybe not so much sales and marketing, because that's not really something that we do that much of. We really depend on the channels that we're on to do all the marketing for us. Like at the end of the day, Airbnb, there's just no competing with them on a marketing front. They spent so much, maybe not now, but they were spending so much money. Booking.com, Expedia, all the others, there's just so much ad money being spent that we're happy to let them do all that marketing for us. Our priority is to like win on those platforms, so have the top ranked listings. And the way we do that is through ratings. So actually what's happened is as we've added units, our ratings have actually gone up. And I think that's in direct relation with just being able to, and like the team hasn't scaled proportionally to that. Like we have quite a small team. And that's because of these tools, like they've just made it operationally, like the operational efficiency with which that we operate has helped us to make every stay important, make sure that we're on top of everything, make every guest that stays with us, even though we might have, 150 guests staying with us, they feel like they're the only guest staying with us and they have all of our attention. I think that's what has really driven sales, is, those 5-star reviews, the Superhost status, it's like having 5.0 listings that, when you also look at the photos, you're like, wow, this is a beautiful place. And then you look at the ratings and you're like, wow, they actually care about us staying as well. And there's a lot of those 5 stars. That's really what drives the business, especially on Airbnb.
Amazing. And so, yeah, that's interesting. So a lot of the traffic that you're getting is from other traffic sources then, as you say.
Yeah.
You have a similar model as a hotel, which is to have a distribution of rooms, right? Throughout.
Yeah, exactly.
And availability on several other platforms. And then sort of, when they come in, what you do is just making sure that you're improving the experience through data.
For sure. 100%.
Wow,
yeah, like the direct channel is something that we're going to work on at some point. It's really important. Personally, I don't put that much importance on it because I think you just have to invest so much money into that channel, even though you're not hiring a developer and paying them, X amount of dollars for it. There's still so much ad buys. There's still so much marketing spend they have to spend. And what you're probably doing is you're offering them at a discount to even like incentivize people to book through your direct channel versus booking through something that's already established. That at the end of the day doesn't even make sense. Like, yeah, you probably want to be a bit more platform agnostic, but if you're distributed enough between all the different channels, then you're kind of maybe essentially platform agnostic, So that's sort of my strategy is let's focus on winning on the channels that we're on, the ones that have millions and millions of hits every single day, and worry about our direct channel later. Maybe if we ever decide to, maybe if we have enough money and we're like, hey, we don't know what to do with it, well, like, let's go invest heavily on it.
Commonly a problem with startups, right? You just have so much money, you don't know what to do with it anymore.
For sure, yeah, exactly.
That's funny. Awesome. So let's take a little step back and like, this is not your first ride as an entrepreneur, as a founder. You've probably had some sort of failures, successes, frustrations, moments of glory.
Right.
Did you have some good advice for people who are starting out, whether that's in entrepreneurship or in no coding or just general?
Yeah. So my first project was and actually it was an art-based project. It was a way to like in Montreal, there's a massive art scene, so it was very much you have all these artists, but no one's making any money. It was just really tough to be an artist. So a lot of my friends were artists. So I wanted to devise a way to sort of change the way the art industry operates, in the sense of, instead of it being based on like having to sell an artwork to get any sort of income, we moved to create like a different model where we would have an exhibition, and people would donate when they entered the exhibition, and then they would essentially vote on the artwork that was on display. And then we would take all the donations that we collected, or the cover that we might have charged, and redistribute that to all the artists based on essentially the audience voting. So we tried to democratize that a bit, and sort of move away from having it to be sales dependent. And at that point in time, I thought, this is game changer. This is going to change the art world. Like, I'm here to change everything. And I think like I had these like massive ambitions. It was like, this is such a good idea. And we started working on a website, and we built it out, and we had an art gallery, like an actual physical location, and things were going really well. And then we just straight up ran out of money. So like after like just like barely surviving for so long, ran out of money. And I think also online there is, you're not going to change the world. Not yet. Like, try to like reduce the scope of what you're trying to, like the problem you're trying to solve. Reduce your stay ambitious, but stay focused on like minor victories. Like, just like focus on, all right, how do I win tomorrow? How do I win the next day? How do I win the next day? And then you can string enough of those along together, then you will change the world. You just maybe won't notice that you have until, like much later. So I think
I love that. That's a really valuable piece of advice, because like so many founders out there, and yes, you will be able to change the world eventually, but like, the way that Airbnb sort of started off, as an interesting example, in terms of the way they distributed their rooms, they weren't trying to get all the traffic towards their website. Well, they were, but they actually started getting traffic through posting on Craigslist, stuff like that.
Right.
So don't like, changing people's behavior is way more difficult in the short term. And I love that. Like in the music industry as well, a lot of people are like, well, we're just going to bypass these labels completely. And some people have been relatively successful in that, but you have to understand how to leverage the existing system to be able to transform it in the new one to a certain extent. And it's very counterintuitive, because a lot of what you stand for, like you were saying, is like this idea of like changing the world. So I'd say like, believe you can change the world, but understand that that you have to take small steps to get there, and also like the right step at the right time. And I think that's where a lot of founders get like demotivated. They're like, I have an idea, I'm gonna go and build the whole thing. It's like, wait. Let's see if people want this thing. Let's see it's not just sort of your mom telling you she likes your idea. You have 100 customers waiting behind to pay for it when you've built it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think if you have a very well-defined end goal and like image of what it is, you need to get rid of that, because that is not going to be the same. Like, I think something that I try to do is I look at where, I might be personally, or where we might be with Nuage next week. And then I'm just like, all right, like this is where we are today. This is where we're going to be next week. And then try to work towards that. And then at the end of the week, do like a self-evaluation and be like, what's the delta? Like, what did I fall short on? Where did I exceed? And so just like try to do it week by week. And then the longer view is just a bit more abstract. It has less sort of like specifics, because you have to adapt, you have to change. Like, even like things won't work out the way that you think they're going to work out. You're going to have hiccups along the way. Like a pandemic might come and ruin everything. So, like you just have to be like flexible. You have to be adaptable. You need to have like an end state in mind, but you can't be too married to it. You have to be able to flex, like to be, to pivot and just be flexible.
Yeah, no, I think that's really spot on. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people get caught in that trap of sort of trying to fulfill. And I think part of it is also from the fact that a lot of people very early on want to jump into fundraising, right? And that when you talk about fundraising, you're constantly having to convince people about this 10-year vision, when you're really executing on a day-by-day level. And it's a really difficult thing to balance. So that's where I always encourage people to really focus on the building of the business, because it gives you at least better, I'm not going to say you're going to have it all figured out before raising, if raising is what you want to do, but you have much higher chances of raising, first of all, if you do have more things figured out.
Right.
And also it's like you'll have a better understanding of your core business. So the things that you're promising to someone coming in, like an investor who's going to be in your life for the next 5, 10, 20 years, is relatively realistic because you've really gone through the hard part, which is the building a business part.
For sure. Yeah, and which is why I like bootstrap businesses, which is why we're bootstrapping. It makes you focus on what matters. You don't have money to spend on something that might think is a good idea. It's like, is this going to help us today? No. All right, forget about it. Is this going to help us today? Yes. All right, here's the very limited amount of resources that we have going towards this. Makes you just like efficiency is super important when you're bootstrapping, because you have to be lean. You have to cut. We have a saying, we say cut the fat. We talk about that all the time. And so I think maybe that's why bootstrapping is an effective way.
Do you guys work in French? That expression is like couper dans l'art, right? It's like it's a very French expression.
It depends. So I'm primarily in English. I speak French, but I'm more comfortable in English. But some of the team, they speak French amongst themselves. So yeah, we're sort of we're a bilingual office.
That's amazing. Yeah, Montreal. Yeah. I guess you got to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For the most part, yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, I mean, where do you see this all going, basically, right? Because like you have guys like you, they don't have any coding experience. They enter companies. They're able to figure things out with no-code tools, implement them in a way that they give a lot of power. What kind of things do you think this is going to sort of influence in the industry? Like, where do you see this whole movement going? And I guess the next follow-up is like, what's the most exciting for you at the moment?
I think like we'll just see more startups. We'll just see more people who like just don't have an excuse to not build something anymore, which is good. I think like it's easy to fall into a trap where you're like, oh, I need someone else to build this. I need more help. I need something else. And I think now what you just need is a bit of time. It's just like one less thing that you need in order to like execute on a goal or something that you might want to build. So I think like we'll see more startups. We'll see more services being offered, which is always important. I think like there's always problems to solve. There's like minor things that a big company might not want to tackle, whereas someone who has some no-code experience, who has built something, is just not trying to monetize it fully, or not trying to like have a massive user base, just trying to solve a very specific problem for a very small number of people. They'll be able to do that. I think that's what no-code kind of offers you. You don't need to have a massive market to build something. You don't need to justify to a set of investors, what's your total addressable market? It's like, it's 20 people, but it takes me 3 days to build it, so might as well. Yeah. Like that's totally cool. So I think we'll see like many more like small problems solved, which is good, because the small problems are always the most annoying. Where you're trying to do something and it's just like the smallest thing is just like a minor small gap that's like not letting you do it, and you're just like, oh, that needs to be fixed. And so having people who plug those holes is going to be really important.
Totally agree. And I think that it's like a lot of people like forget, like everyone like sees the big headlines, right? It's like Instagram, everyone's looking for the all or nothing, right? It's like $1 billion exit. But most people who are trying to get into entrepreneurship, like if you sell a company for $5 million, like that's a huge step. You can do a lot of stuff with that kind of money. And I think when you talk about small problems, like that's what you're talking about, that there's going to be a lot more companies that are between $1 and $20 million and don't have the ambition of becoming $1 billion company.
Right.
And I think that's a very healthy middle ground.
Yeah, I think if you're running like, let's say you're running like 10 of those small like $1 million companies, like that's pretty good too, right? So like I think small is cool, like small is good. Like you much more manageable. I think people will be running multiple projects as well at the same time, which is just going to lead to like more robust founders, more robust entrepreneurs with like much more diverse skill sets, because they might be working on like 3 different projects that are completely different and in completely different industries. So I think the room for personal growth is much greater when you're working on something that might be a bit smaller.
Totally. I also think that, actually, I just thought of this, but I think that no-code will also like give a lot of consultants power. Like suddenly
Mhm.
people will be able to just like solve problems in companies and be paid like handsomely for it, you know?
Right.
Like you learn these chops and it's like you can do so many things, you know, build
Yeah.
products, you can automate processes, you can you know, gather and analyze data, you can, so it's really we're talking about a new feature set, kind of like a new category of employees. I think it's really going to change the way that we upskill people as well. It's just
Right.
so
I
much
agree.
quicker to learn, and this is like
100%.
this is the backbone of how you build and run businesses. So it's
Yeah.
like as we move more towards digital, like all companies being sort of digital companies, like this is going to play a big part of that, I think.
Right. Yeah. Learn faster, build faster, iterate faster. Those are all really cool, and for like much less risk. You know, just not having to make massive investments into like a new technology or something. Just
Yeah.
build it, test it, see how it does first, and then decide is
Yeah.
this something we want to invest in or not.
Invest your time, invest your money. Is it,
Mhm.
and I think that's something that people forget. They fall in love with their ideas, and it's so difficult. I think one of the hardest things that I have to do with startups when I train them is to kind of level set with them and be like, hey, like, you know, you want to learn these skills, you need to become a better entrepreneur overall. Focus on your
Right.
own growth and the growth of your company, and I think that over time that will like you will be able to basically build one of your companies that really succeeds. And what NoCode
Yeah.
does is basically that it increases that rate. Like you can test out in the same year with a full-time job like 5 to 10 ideas,
For sure.
basically.
For
Test
sure.
them
Weekends.
easily.
Just with weekends, you know, like it's just the amount of like just the level of things that you can do is
Yeah.
so ridiculous.
You could literally launch one like after like learning how to do certain things, some of the basics, like you could launch one idea every weekend. And just like,
Yeah,
of course,
that's an interesting challenge.
you know, one a weekend and then 2 weekends to kind of test out the market, right?
Right.
And
Yeah,
then
for
you
sure.
get a first response, you know. But I'd say it's usually better to kind of like come out with something you want to commit a little bit more time to. But I definitely think it's a misunderstanding that a lot of these, specifically corporate people, they're like, oh, well, if I want to build this idea that I've had for the past like 10 years and have not had the guts to leave my job, like I'm going to have to quit it. I have to go
Right.
all or nothing. And it's like, no, you
Yeah.
can do this. Like you can work an hour a day and you can become a really good sort of builder and then test out your idea. And yeah,
Right.
either quickly realize it's something worth quitting your job for or not, you know. I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
that's because no one wants to take the risk. And I think that's what no code provides. It decreases the risk of
Right.
everything,
For sure.
right?
For sure.
Because spending
Right.
3 years on an idea is a big risk. It's not a
Right.
money risk, but it's a huge amount of your time too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes the strategy of just like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks is an effective strategy. And no code lets you do that because it's just pretty easy to just like throw something at the wall. And
Yeah.
then, you know, like maybe maybe just flops right away and you're like, all right, cool, like I didn't waste any time. And if anything, you learned something. You like learned how to do something new with no code, so that the next time you work on something or a project, you have a bit more skill, your skill set's a bit more defined.
There you go.
You
Let's
have
call
like
it
a bit more
the
experience with
spaghetti
each software.
strategy, right? It's a
Yeah,
spaghetti
exactly.
strategy. Sticks in the
Yeah,
wall and then it's ready.
yeah, exactly.
So, do you have any spaghettis you're throwing at the wall apart from what you're working on at Nuage, or is it really just full on?
To be honest, I don't have too many like side projects at the moment. And even with like the stuff at Nuage, it's been the past few months have been a bit like I've been off my game. So need to like, get back into it, get back into I have like a long list of upgrades for the stack that we currently have that I've been meaning on working on. I do want to get, so I think I'm a bit behind. Like I don't have that much experience with Webflow. I don't have that much experience with like a software like a Dallo and those types of a bit more customer facing stuff. Like
Oh, I
a
talked
lot
to
of
them yesterday. We're gonna bring him on the.
okay.
We're gonna bring Adalo on soon.
Yeah, I used it a bit, maybe like a couple weeks ago, and I was really impressed. I thought it was really cool. So I'm a bit behind. I have some learning to do. I have some catching up to do. So I
It
think
sounds like you're not behind at all, but that's definitely the right mentality to have
right.
the feeling of like, constantly having an itch to learn new things because
Yeah,
stuff's progressing and it's exciting.
I think major projects that I have lined up is primarily like circled around work. I want to build a guest-facing app that people can use while they stay with us. Probably looking at using that for using $1 for that. And then we have like we need to upgrade our website. Our website sucks at the moment, so just trying to upgrade that. And I was using Bubble for a bit, and I really liked it, but sort of just hit a wall, and then got a bit lazy, which isn't good. But I've sort of been in between. Like, do I like go back to Bubble, or I've been hearing so many people talk about Webflow and what Webflow can do that I'm sort of maybe thinking of trying that one out.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of your surrounding skills, Webflow plays really well into that stack, basically.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
In terms of you already having Airtable as a database, because the great thing about Bubble that I love is the fact it has all integrated, and also their crazy APIs. Their API integrations, they have 930. They have their own API
so
creator. Like there's a lot of power in that. And I think that, listen, it's interesting. Like, I'm super excited to see where both these platforms go. I think that Emmanuel and Vlad are doing an excellent job with their company, their companies, and along with, of course, Wade from Zapier and all the other guys, the guys at Adalo too. I mean, I'm constantly excited to see all these new tools coming out. But
sure.
I would also say that it's like it's good to see some of them mature now, because I think that now it's opening up so much more capability, and that's what's exciting in the no-code space, is that, like, back in the day there was this huge promise of what no-code could do, and it's just now that we're reaching this place. It's like this turning point where you can just it's almost limitless, like tapping into APIs. You can tap into, like, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, like so many cutting edge technologies that I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think one of actually the problems maybe the space is having is a bit too much, like there's so much choice. Before it was easy, like you wanted to do something, you had one option, that was all you had. And now you have, like, we talked about this maybe before the call about all the competition that's coming out. You have like 2 different companies fighting for the same market, which you didn't really have before, which is good for the space, which is going to push those companies to innovate and continue to expand their offerings. But for the user, for me, it's sort of like, all right, I got to choose between Bubble and Webflow, and then I have to decide which one works best and ask around. And I just, maybe I'm complaining because I'm a bit lazy, but I think
you don't seem very lazy.
An interesting direction would be sort of like bundles, just like selling a bundle. Like this is a Webflow X member stack X Airtable X Zapier sort of stack, and just almost bringing some of the elements of what made no-code successful, just having that ease of use and having a lot of plug and play, and then just maybe no-codifying a no-code stack.
I love it, because that's one of the things that we do at WeAreNoCode, is basically saying, like, all these technologies are out there, but we're actually focusing on the humans behind these things. And so it's if you're a human trying to put together a specific project, you need a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and so the idea of, first of all, figuring out what's the best stack for me, what's the easiest go to market, so I can focus in on those tools at first. And that's just super useful, right? And that's where I think that we have a long way to go in terms of bringing the no-code community together, right? I also think that for some of these bigger platforms, what's really important now is support, community, and also longevity, right? The ability for these companies to stay in the long term, so that people who learn them are able to kind of stick with them. And so, that's what we're trying to do as well. When we say we are no-code, we're not proclaiming ourselves like we are no-code. What we're saying is hey, we're all no-code. And that's why I'm doing these interviews as well, is partly to bring together the creators, the people who are building these platforms, and say hey, what if we all tried to have a discussion where we're trying to focus on this larger problem, which is the fact that no-code right now is this tiny subsection. So why don't we start getting together and discussing and marketing this whole movement to a much larger audience, so that people like Webflow and Bubble don't have to fight each other, because they're essentially
for everyone.
Will trickle to both platforms depending on what they're building. And that's what I find exciting about the no-code space, is that there's definitely a lot of, and some people have done a great job with sort of NoCode communities as well. But I think that, we still have a long way to go. It's just the beginning, and super stoked.
Still super early, but honestly, growing really fast. Like, so I didn't even know that the space existed. Maybe like up until like 6 months ago, 7 months ago. I was sort of like, I thought I was like the only person who had figured out how to do this. You know, like I was just so naive about the space.
Well, no. I mean, you say that, but like at the level at which you did it, you definitely are a small minority of people who have understood it.
Right. And then I just I think I followed a few people on Twitter, and then all of a sudden my Twitter feed was just like all no code. And I was like seeing these people, and I was like, wait, that person built that, and that person built that, and that person built that. Oh, there's actually people who are using these tools in these ways. You know, I thought it was like one of the only ones, but it's really interesting to see that there is a community, and seeing that community grow has been pretty exciting. It's good to, you know, it's helpful. Like I find out about new tools all the time through the people that I follow, and that's important because it helps me, you know, grow as a person and do my job better, and you know, just gain more skills, which is something I always try to do.
I love it.
So having a community is super important, and being part of a community, even though, you know, I'm been on the outskirts, but just like, you know, following the right people and then sort of like staying up to date is really helpful. So what you're doing is great. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. No, and Nadim, I mean, you are one of the people who really created a great success story in this space, and through that, you're allowing the space to grow as well, because people need examples. People need people to kind of pave the way. And you maybe adopted these tools at a place where it was relatively risky, and it wasn't really known whether or not you'd be able to get to the end. But that curiosity is kind of leading the way of convincing other people to get on board this train and to start building out their ideas. And it's not a huge risk. It doesn't cost too much. So I want to
exactly like that. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. No worries. You know, it was just sort of a lot of it came out of, a lot of it came out of the question, well, can I do this? So it was like, well, can I do this? And then it's like, yeah, I can do that. And then it's like, all right, well, now can I do this? And it's like, yeah, I could do that too. And then you sort of like, from there, next thing you know, you have something that's so robust, that does so many things. And then, you know, it's like, all right, so you have it working in one direction where, you know, let's say that email was coming in and was getting sent to Airtable and then was getting sent to Google Sheets. But then now you also build it in the reverse direction where it comes back from Google Sheets to Airtable, and sort of like, you have all the tools. You start to build like a web of communication between all of these tools. And the level of complexity that you can get just by doing one news app, you know, one zap at a time, just like opens so many doors. So that question I think is really important. It's like, what can I do that next? What can I do next? And how do you sort of like grow it step by step?
Well, that's a great end, because I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you.
And before we leave this, where can people find you? Where can people find out more about Nuage? And where can people kind of reach out to you personally if they want to?
Twitter, Nadim El-Asmar on Twitter, just one word, probably the best place to reach me, or my email. But yeah, just DM me and I'll answer you. I don't have too many followers, so I see everything on my Twitter. And for Nuage, right now, I guess hard to find. We're a bit under the radar, but we'll have some updates soon. So I guess if you follow me on Twitter, you'll keep up to date with Nuage and sort of what we do. But yeah, online.
That's awesome. Nadim, thanks so much for joining and inspiring all of us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Chatting again for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Take care.